The structure of today's event will consist of an introduction of the report itself, followed by a panel debate and a 30 minutes Q&A. And for all of those listening in today, you are not able to actually speak, but you can use the chat function to pose questions to the panel and the moderator during the panel discussions and the Q&A session afterwards. So let me just say a few words about IPPFoRB and the background for this report before I introduce our other guests for today. IPPFoRB is a global network of former and sitting parliamentarians acting in their individual capacity to promote and advance freedom of religion or belief for everyone, everywhere. Our vision is a world in which everyone enjoys their inalienable right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, as defined in Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Our mission is to connect, equip, and support parliamentarians from around the globe to facilitate their advocacy for freedom of religion or belief, and also provide them with the necessary tools and competence in this field. We also aim to connect parliamentarians with other relevant stakeholders, such as civil society actors, relevant institutions, and religious and belief communities. We cooperate with regional networks of parliamentarians in both Asia and Africa, and we aim to increase our outreach in Europe, including in Western Balkans. And over the last few years, we have established a good relationship with several parliamentarians in the Western Balkans, and many of them have positively contributed to our international events. And you'll be meeting some of them today. The report we are launching was written upon the suggestion of one of our network members from the region for parliamentarians interested in working more in this area. So together with Mine Yildirim, who I will introduce in a minute, the author of the report, we thus embarked on country visits to Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, Serbia and Kosovo in 2019 and 2020. And during our travels, we met with a broad range of actors and engaged in many interesting discussions. So with this study, we wanted to provide parliamentarians and other concerned actors in the region with a starting point for future dialogue and potential cooperation. I have to say also that our aim is not for everyone to agree on all the various challenges in each country, and also not to assess which country is doing better or worse, but instead, we aim to create a common platform for all for dialogue and discussion. You should all have received the link to the report per email. And also now posted in the chat, whispers Palak to me. As part of this event, we've also come out with a statement with quotes from the 4 parliamentarians who were invited to take part in the panel a bit later. And the statement addresses opportunities for mutual dialogue and cooperation to advance FoRB in the Western Balkans. The statement is posted on our website, and the link will also appear in the chat. We hope today's event will further strengthen such cooperation and dialogue, and possibly be a starting point for creating a regional network of parliamentarians working on freedom of religion and belief in Western Balkans. So let me now introduce our dear colleague, Dr. Mine Yildirim, who is the author of the report and was with us during all these travels and has spent considerable time putting all the information together. Mine is a researcher on human rights with a focus on freedom of religion or belief, its intersection with associative rights and gender equality and the protection of minorities. She is heading the Norwegian Helsinki Committee's Freedom of Belief Initiative project, and she's also a member of the OSCE ODIHR's panel of experts on freedom of religion or belief. And for those who might not know what this stands for, it's the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, where Mine is on the expert panel. So without further ado, I'll leave the word to Mine, and thank you all for joining in today.
Thank you, Liv, and welcome everyone. I would like to start by saying thank you to the parliamentarians who initiated this study on how parliamentarians can take the work further on freedom of religion or belief in the region. And Thanks are also due to the IPPFoRB team, who managed the project professionally with a high level of competence, commitment, and engagement. I'm also thankful to many individuals, some of whom are attendees right now, who took their time and shared their expertise as well as experiences with us in openness. Their contribution to the report has been invaluable. I think I also speak for the whole team when I say that we really appreciated the beauty of the Western Balkans and hospitality and the generosity that we have experienced. I will start sharing my screen. One moment, please. So this report, what is it about, or what is it for? First of all, it seeks to present a baseline on the situation of freedom of religion or belief in the Western Balkans. And secondly, it seeks to propose both general and country-specific recommendations to parliamentarians that can serve as a roadmap. And the baseline is presented with reference to relevant international human rights commitments and national legal standards on freedom of religion or belief. And the key freedom of religion or belief issues and the work that is carried out in this field by international and national organizations in Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, Kosovo, and Serbia. It is hoped that this baseline study and recommendations will contribute to informing parliamentary work and pursuing parliamentary collaboration with civil society, including religious or belief communities, human rights institutions, and international human rights mechanisms. A few things about this report. It is actually the first report that has a regional focus on freedom of religion or belief to identify opportunities for parliamentarians to engage with this right. And as Liv also mentioned, the report is not prescriptive, but it's more descriptive, because we are mindful of the highly complex and contextual nature of each country's experience with this protection of this right, and therefore the report does not aim to be prescriptive or put forward an easy, standard, or all-encompassing roadmap, because we do understand that contextual issues play an important role. And it does not provide a ranking of the state of freedom of religion or belief in the different countries that it presents. Just a few words about the methodology. The study relied on mixed methods drawing on a variety of data sources, and these included literature review, interviews with stakeholders during visits to Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, Kosovo, and Serbia in 2019 and 2020, semi-structured qualitative in-person and telephone interviews and group discussions with about 85 key stakeholders were conducted. And the interviewees included a diverse range of external experts and representatives from intergovernmental organizations, civil society, and religious or belief communities. I would like to now connect to the report itself very briefly, because the report has its own website, which I would like to show you and briefly go over its structure. So you can also find it on its own website. I'll just move this away. westernbalkansreport.ippforb.com. I think you were sent the link for this report. And the chapters go through the international standards on freedom of religion or belief, and then each country has its own chapter, and then finally it ends with recommendations. And in the country chapters, they all follow the same outline, We present the legal framework within the country and challenges to freedom of religion or belief, and the work on the promotion of the right to freedom of religion or belief, for example, like this. And then it's possible to see a map of key actors that work on this right, or collaborations could be drawn with. And also, going back, I would like to also tell you that the report has many quotes from the interlocutors that we have been in touch with, whose expertise we drew from. And finally, also, it is possible here, as you can see, to share your views and opinions about the report through sending a message to the IPPFoRB team. So it's worth really looking at the report website and exploring. It's very user-friendly. So now I will move back to my presentation. And it also provides the good practices and country-specific concrete recommendations. As with any study, this study also has its own limitations. Two key limitations have been the lack of consistent and systematic monitoring data on freedom of religion or belief in the Western Balkan countries. And secondly, the brief time allocated to country visits, which restricted the number of meetings and places visited. But we try to make efforts to compensate for this limitation through follow-up telephone interviews after the country visit. So what are some of the key findings in the report? All countries have significant human rights obligations, including freedom of religion or belief. The challenges, however, remain in implementation, despite these significant international human rights obligations. And there may be, it's possible to see a number of common challenges in the area of freedom of religion or belief. And these include associative rights of religious or belief communities on recognition and acquisition of legal personality or legal entity status, manifestations of religion or belief in the public sphere, and this is particularly related to maybe Islamic manifestations, religious education in public schools and restitution of property, worship places, religion or belief-based discrimination and hate incidents. And also, we found that important European Court of Human Rights judgments have not been implemented, and these relate to recognition of religious or belief communities, discrimination and religious symbols in the public sphere. We also found that there is strong international presence in the Western Balkan countries, and the goal of EU accession and focus on non-discrimination, equality, gender equality and conflict resolution, rule of law, as well as capacity building for judiciary and equality and human rights institutions are supported. However, the focus on freedom of religion or belief is often not a priority, although there are important initiatives that can bring parliamentarians, civil society, and religious or belief communities together. In Western Balkans, promotion of the right to freedom of religion or belief and systematic reporting on this remains fairly limited. There is, however, monitoring on hate crimes and hate speech. In addition, some religious groups monitor freedom of religion or belief for their own community. And potentially very important bodies such as parliamentary bodies, ombudspersons, and equality bodies are in place. However, since limited or no priority is given to the right to freedom of religion or belief, this potential remains largely untapped. There is low level of awareness on freedom of religion or belief and its relevance for the Western Balkan countries. And this study also found that that there is fragmentation and disconnection, and this is a challenge in terms of the protection, really tapping into the protection of freedom of religion or belief between related issues such as freedom of religion or belief, hate crimes, equality, and non-discrimination, and between parliamentarians, religious or belief communities, and CSOs, and between international, national, and regional human rights mechanisms and political processes. We found that actually parliamentarians could have a very important role to play against this backdrop of disconnection. So there are many opportunities for the engagement by parliamentarians. The work of parliamentarians, when based on a thorough understanding and grounding in international standards on freedom of religion or belief and other interdependent rights, will be more effective. Religion and ethnicity, politics, and freedom of religion or belief are often intertwined in the region, as it is the case in many other regions in the world, which makes it harder to address freedom of religion or belief issues. Parliamentarians have an important role to play in ensuring that their respective parliaments' draft or existing laws are compatible with international human rights law, and IPPFoRB's website provides many resources on assessing the compatibility of national laws with international human rights standards. Parliamentary mechanisms at the disposal of parliamentarians that remain underutilized could be used as effective means of addressing freedom of religion or belief issues, as well as national and regional cooperation. Parliamentarians could consider the committee system and rules, the political situation, party system, and parliamentary resources of their parliaments, and reflect on which mechanism is best suited for work to promote this important right. Parliamentarians could also consider whether there is a need to establish new mechanisms or new bodies, and broad alliances could be created with CSOs or religious or belief communities and experts, and regional networks could be highly effective. Parliamentarians could engage with national human rights bodies, such as national human rights institutions, ombudspersons, institutions, or equality bodies, with a view to creating synergies to protect and promote human rights, including freedom of religion or belief. These, at the moment, remain largely untapped. This is what we have found. And parliamentarians also could step up their crucial role in ensuring government's compliance with international human rights obligations and in translating these into national legislation and policies. Relevant international human rights compliance control mechanisms have made important findings on freedom of religion or belief in Western Balkans. For example, the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights has underscored the important role of parliamentarians in this area. I'd like to quote, the role of parliaments at the national level in the promotion and protection of human rights can be greatly enhanced through their active and proactive engagement with the international and regional human rights mechanisms, end of quote. And the key relevant mechanisms for the Western Balkans include the UN, especially the Universal Periodic Review, treaty bodies, and the Council of Europe, as well as the OSCE, whose work on freedom of religion or belief is very much present in the region. And parliamentarians could initiate and build broad alliances, which include CSOs and religious or belief communities and secular groups. Deliberate actions on bringing together parliamentarians, CSOs, and religious or belief communities are very few and often not persistent in the region. Such collaborations, however, may mobilize support to strengthen this important right and can provide invaluable information and expertise for parliamentarians needed for the effective protection and promotion and monitoring work on this right. There are many more recommendations which can be found in the report itself. I would like to end the presentation on the report here, and thank you for your attention. And maybe I will now give the floor, the virtual floor, to Susan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mine, for a great presentation and for running us through the report. And I really do recommend everyone to check it out. And it's very easy to maneuver around and find the sections that you prefer to read. We'll now move to our panel discussion. So I'd just like to introduce our moderator, Susan, who will be chairing us through this next session. Susan Kerr is Senior Advisor on Freedom of Religion or Belief at the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. Susan has led the Europe office of CSW, which works to promote freedom of religion or belief for people of all faiths or none, and has also served on the board of coordinators of the European Platform Against Religious Intolerance and Discrimination, which brings together different faith and non-faith-based organizations to promote freedom of religion or belief. And she has also worked in the European Parliament, not as a parliamentarian, but in another capacity. So please, Susan, I leave the panel discussion in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you. So you will have seen on the program that Vesna Markovic, the head of the Serbian parliamentary delegation to the OSCE and vice president of the Foreign Affairs Committee, she's on the program, but unfortunately she is unwell and unable to join us today. However, we have three other panelists with us today. And in alphabetical order, the first panelist is Besa Ismaili. She's an advisor to the PDK parliamentary group in Kosovo and a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Islamic Studies in Pristina, Kosovo. She's over 20 years of experience in academia, where her publications have addressed cross-cutting issues such as human rights, politics, religion and freedom of religion or belief, gender, education and peace building. Besa has also worked in various international organizations and has served as an MP to the Parliament of the Republic of Kosovo. Then we have Senad Šepić. He's the leader of the independent bloc Bosnia-Herzegovina. He is a former member of Parliament, Deputy Minister of Civil Affairs and head of Bosnia and Herzegovina's delegation to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. And last but not least, we have Vladimir Jorchev, who has served for 14 years or 5 terms as a member of the Parliament in North Macedonia. As an MP, he has served as the head of the Macedonian delegation to the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly in Vienna and as the deputy member of the delegation to the Council of Europe. Vladimir participated in the IPPFoRB global conferences in Berlin in 2016, in Singapore in 2019, and he attended the IPPFoRB Academy in Oxford. So welcome to the 3 panelists. And before beginning with the questions today, I would like to ask everybody participating, please to send your questions, any questions you might have, in the chat box, and you can send it to host and panelists, and then we will pose those as the event progresses. So I'd like to start with a question of my own. Each of you have read Dr. Yildirim's report, and I would like to ask you all the same question. In your opinion, what would be a good approach to building the synergies and cooperation needed to advance the right of freedom of religion or belief in your region or specifically within your country? Perhaps we could start with Besa Ismaili. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure for me to join this discussion. And it was actually even a greater pleasure when I was first introduced to the report. Actually, we met during your research in Kosovo, and it was very, how to say, encouraging for us that finally someone in Europe too got interested into this matter, because it's really of paramount importance. And unfortunately, we haven't seen much of a scheme, let's say an alliance for this region or for Europe that focuses on FoRB specifically. Why I think it's important? It's important because of the societies we live in, and for the matter of stability and peace, because unfortunately we have had this impression that human rights are all kinds of rights, but FoRB is somehow perhaps different or less, or let's say less present on different roundtables and discussions and concerns. Having said this, I have in mind the lack of systematic reporting, that FoRB is human rights just like any other rights. And unfortunately, we haven't seen or equally seen the mechanisms to report about the situation of the freedom of rights and belief. So yes, I'm very happy to join the discussion, and I was very happy to consult the report. And I want to congratulate Mina for the marvelous job she has done. I think it's pretty historic. It's a foundation that we can all build on further on. What is it that we can do? I think that there is a myriad of mechanisms that we already have in place, but which we can enact and put into a function in the sense that we build a network of collaboration between different stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, I mean states, governments, civil society, faith-based organizations, religious communities, and all the rest, in the sense of what the parliaments can do. I can also speak of Kosovo, and there was this report which was quite, I believe, inclusive. In Kosovo, there is a supremacy of the international human rights treaties over the domestic legislation. And I think this is quite an advantage for our society. Having said this, again, I mean, in addition to national legislation, which is also pretty much advanced and in harmonization with these treaties. But having said this, I believe that what we can do is to build the capacities within these institutions, such as justice, judiciary, including the government itself, because we would like to have them see that they are in full power of cooperating to support freedom of religion and belief, and to address certain challenges that are present in various societies. Hence more, I wouldn't want to see the situation that we see now, which is that we have groups of parliamentarians who have more advanced, let's say, knowledge or experience in addressing issues of freedom of religion. But I would like to see parliaments and each of parliamentarians who are very much aware and equipped with the knowledge about the freedom of religion and belief, and who work on this in order to advance them. So I would like to see a shared vision to advance freedom of religion and belief. And I believe that there are mechanisms which only need to connect to each other, be that at our own national levels, but also regional levels. For sure, this is what I believe is of paramount importance. And another thing is, which is also related to the freedom of religion and belief, is the issue of gender as well. I cannot skip this. And I think that along the line, all the programs, and I believe in our region, especially in the Western Balkans, in Bosnia, Kosovo, I believe it's same in North Macedonia, Serbia, and Montenegro, gender equality is a priority to all kinds of agendas, governmental or parliamentary agendas. But in addition to that, I believe that FoRB as such is intertwined a lot with the gender. And I believe that we can work both ways, from the government to the bottom and bottom up, but also building up these capacities at the societies. We do not have, I mean, when we speak of discrimination at this level, the social groups are marginalized, discriminated, and they are not enough empowered to report or to address the matters. So I think it's very much important to spread out our activities at all levels, be that non-state actors or state actors. It's very much important to do this. I need also to mention another aspect, which is the pandemics and how all that actually affected the overall situation. And I think the deficiencies have surfaced, especially during the last 2 years when it comes to the issue of freedom of religion or belief. I mean, the lack of reporting mechanisms, the lack of enforcing different judiciary decisions, the lack of, let's say, free legal aid means. This is also another matter that has surfaced during these 2 years in our society. And I believe that these are more or less all those areas that each of the parliaments can enhance and work. And I believe that these issues of concerns are more or less common to the region, and these are the aspects that our respective parliaments could actually cooperate and address them.
Thank you very much. That was an incredibly comprehensive answer, and you raised a number of very interesting points, I think, around shared vision, around marginalization and discrimination, and the need to empower those who are marginalized and being discriminated against. You raised mechanisms that may exist, but where perhaps further capacity building or simply linking parts together could have a more positive effect. I'd like to now hand over to Senad Šepić, and I'd like to pose the same question about good approaches to building synergies.
Thank you so much. I think that you can hear me now. It's okay. Okay, thank you so much. And I would like also to thank to organizer to invite me on this discussing about this topic. Today's our national holiday in Bosnia, and I would like to use this opportunity to congratulate to everyone if is listening us in this topic who is from Bosnia. I think that we should, when we are discussing about this topic, I think that we should go through at least three at least three roads or ways. The first one is information, education, and promotion. And I would like to, let's say, to agree with Besa when she said that only a few of member of parliaments know about this topic. We should make this, let's say, this topic very, very wider, that everyone can be informed and that everyone can be, let's say, can be in about this topic. Freedom of religion or belief must be for all. And I think that we, especially who know about this topic, we should be more loud. Educate media, NGOs, parliamentarians, political parties, religion communities, universities. I have been lucky, as I was invited as a member of parliament. That was maybe 8 or 9 years ago. I was invited to attend one forum in New York. After that, I also was invited to attend a forum in Berlin. And that was my, let's say, my lucky place where I can learn about this topic. But when I went back from the New York and from Berlin, and when I was talking to my colleagues in parliament, very few of them knew about that I was talking and that I was wanted to do. And that's why I think that IPP Academy also could be organized trainings, not only for parliamentarians, then also for media, NGOs, and something like that. The second chapter that I think the second track is capacity building on international standards, human rights, law framework of the right to freedom. Whole package about these international standards should be, let's say, sent to all members of parliament, not only on the state level. In Bosnia, we have many levels of, let's say, many levels of capacities, and I think that we should send that whole package in local languages to all parliamentarians on state level, but also on some, let's say, regional, even municipality levels. I think that you also can let's say, can create a newsletter on this topic, which also can be sent through mailing list to the wider people. And the third one track that I think could be very useful is to create and develop a strong regional forum and cooperation among member of parliaments, not only current of them, then former as well. We can organize, for example, at least once per year or two per year, summer or winter school, some gathering that we can be together, sharing our experience and to create some plan for, let's say, for doing the same job for the next let's say next year. I think that also could make us more closer, and we can be more louder and more, let's say, efficient and more influential that we are, let's say, without that approach.
Thank you very much. I think similarly to Besa, you raised the importance of not just educating at the state level, but at really reaching to different levels, but also trying to aim wide with education and capacity building initiatives. I noticed you mentioned, for example, the media, universities, NGOs, political parties, really trying to get across what are the international standards and making sure that FoRB is seen for all and is promoted for everybody. So I'd like to hand over to Vladimir Jorchev. It's always difficult to be the last person to comment on a question. Much has been said, but please, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan. It's good to see you all, guys. It's been a while. It's been a COVID quarter, and there was a COVID 6 months, and there was a COVID year, and there was a COVID year and a half, and we're well heading into second year of COVID and second anniversary. So greetings, good to see you, all of you, and I'm really looking forward to see you all in person. So just a couple of things to say. Mine, thank you very much for the report. It's really done well. I've been looking through it as we were speaking. Just in the last 10 minutes, I've seen some of the points earlier in the materials that were sent. Also, many thanks to Liv, to Mariana, to Palak, to everyone else, to the IPPFoRB team in Oslo. You're really supplying us with a lot of good resources, and thanks, and keep up with the good work. Just a couple of things. I'm just supporting everything that was said by Besa and Senad. So these recommendations are fine. We should try to do them. The things that were mentioned here were good. We're hearing here the organizations like OSCE, like European Union. We should definitely use the resources of the European Union, because both the European Parliament and the European Commission, as well as the other international actors like International Commission on Religious Freedom by the US State Department and all other organizations, are addressing these issues. I would like to mention one more dimension that I can recommend to everyone. And by being in the parliament, I wish I was doing that, but I wish I was doing it more. We need to speak more between ourselves. So my huge recommendation would be for all the current parliamentarians and all current city council members is have a coffee with your colleagues and just say, hey, how it's going? What can we do together? How can we address this issue? I know it sounds simple, but we don't practice that. We don't practice that enough, definitely. So I think, you know, sometimes we are, and of course we need to be there, but sometimes we're too much stuck in too many structures, in too many charters, chapters, declarations, regulations, and so on and so forth. And sometimes just a simple question, hey, how are you? What can we do? Oh, I think I was wrong there. Oh, I think I was wrong there. Not just as a person, but sometimes as a community, it can help even much more. It's the same thing in marriage, you know, like you can have all the possible, you know, contracts, intentions, counseling, chapters, books, and this and that. And sometimes, you know, just an ordinary coffee, you know, with your wife or husband helps much more, you know, like how you're doing, what can we do better? So as I said, in that regard, I can't emphasize enough this. And there is a great saying that that was from Mother Teresa that can summarize all this. And Mother Teresa, among her many wisdoms, and luckily Mother Teresa comes from our region, she said that, quote, peace starts with smile. So yes, indeed, you know, peace starts with smile. And sometimes, you know, this smile, this how are you, this talk or chat can do, you know, much more than many panels, because sometimes, and I've seen that as well, sometimes, you know, the moment we sit on the table, the moment there is you know, one side on one side and the other side is on the other side, and then you have all these note takers, and then you have the internationals, and then you have possibly cameras and this and that. Everyone, you know, goes into their line, everyone goes into their verbal trenches, everyone goes into their own talking point, and there is no real progress. So just long story short, talk more and try to meet other people more. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting additions. You mentioned, of course, the regional level mechanisms. You mentioned the OSCE, the EU. You also mentioned Gjorcev, which of course is also fantastic resources. And just relationship, being in relationship and talking to others and actually asking what are your needs? What do you need? That's what I heard you say. What can we do better? And working from there. Thank you. I'd just like to remind everyone who is tuning in, if you could please send your questions in the chat box. Maybe you tuned in late and didn't know you could do that, but please take the opportunity and write to hosts and panelists, and we will pose those questions to our panelists. So I have another question for you, for each of you, and maybe we will take it in reverse this time, starting with Vladimir. So the study report presented by Dr. Yildirim sets out a number of recommendations to parliamentarians. If you had to choose two of the recommendations, which two do you think would be most helpful in the Western Balkans context? And can I ask, are there any that you think could perhaps be more challenging to implement? Thank you. Vladimir, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. From what I've seen and worked in the last several years and decades, and just spending my life in the Balkans, I think that all major initiatives, especially initiatives related to FoRB, need to involve people with a different religious background. So people with different faiths. Because if you just stress, you know, with the predominant faith or predominant community, then you can't have the whole picture. So if I need to sum up, two recommendations is one of them to be a multi-faith approach, and second would be not just to have the national level. So when you go, you should of course see the capital, but also you should see the smaller areas, and going into the smaller areas, the questions that need to be asked or the situation that need to be seen is also the rights and the relations of a smaller community in that particular city or a town. So my second advice would be go local, and when you go local, see both the majority and the minority on the local level, because not always, you know, the quote majority minority dynamic functions and works on local level that is also on the national level. So this is these are the two recommendations. Always have all the faiths on board, have position and opposition, and the second thing would be go local. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think you summarized that well. So I will pass directly to Senad Šepić. Or maybe we can't hear you.
Is now okay?
Yes, perfect.
Sorry for this. I agree with everything that Vlado said. According to, let's say, his experience, I also have that kind of experience. I know how important it is, if you want to solve some problems, to, let's say, to include all different parts of the society and something like that. And especially go, let's say, to the small communities. When we are talking about this topic, let's say, is a very can be very sensitive, and is very sensitive, especially on the, let's say, on the local levels. And that's why I also agree with him. It's very important go to that local, let's say, levels discussing about this topic. The second one, when I was looking at these recommendations, I can agree, let's say, in general, with all what Mine Yildirim did in these recommendations. And all of these recommendations are very, let's say, necessity for Bosnia, from my experience, for Bosnia as well. But I see the last one, 7.5, as a one which was, let's say, very important in my view, and especially, let's say, for this moment where we are now here in Bosnia. Advocate for freedom of religion or belief for all. For example, I see in my country and also in the whole region, I see a lot of misuse of this topic, a lot of manipulation, politicization about this topic. For example, we in Bosnia, we have at this moment, we have one of the biggest political topic discussion is how to adopt agreement between Islamic community and the state. You know that we already done it with Catholic, let's say, church. That was more than 15 years ago. With Serbian Orthodox Church as well, 2007. Since 2009, we are discussing about, let's say, adopting this agreement between Islamic community and the state. And that, let's say, that agreement is using or misusing and politicization, let's say, in some very, very negative influence in the whole country. And I think, especially when if you are look at the every EU progress report, you will also see that also they stressed this issue as a let's say big threat and big manipulation. And the second let's say recommendation that I see as a very, let's say, smart, including the promotion of freedom of religion or belief for all as a priority in political party program. I can say, and I can promise as a party leader, that I will, let's say, start from myself. I will include this in my political party program, and I will also discuss with my colleagues, because I see this as a very, very smart, let's say, smart contribution in our political party programs. Once when we in Bosnia had some let's say report, that report said that political party in Bosnia and in the whole region are, let's say, the most influential, let's say, organizations more influential than state levels, than let's say than institutions, than some other stakeholders. And that's why I think it's very important, let's say, to discuss about this topic very active inside the political party. And I will put this in my political program as one of our priority. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. I heard you talking about clarifying state-religion relationships to avoid politicization and manipulation, and also the importance of FoRB for all and really acting on that. And I think everyone tuning in from Bosnia and Herzegovina will be happy to hear that this will be in your program. Can I now hand over then to Besa Ismaili? Besa.
Thank you so much, Susan. I need to applaud to the readiness of Mr. Senad. And I hope that other political parties in the regions will follow, including my own political party, which is a center-right conservative one. I think that would be a great move for the region. And to go back to the recommendations of the report, I mean, without wanting to say one is more important than the other, because I think they're all important, because the issue is important and it needs to be like addressed multilaterally. But for the region, and especially for my society and for Kosovo, I think the recommendation that is specific to the ombudsperson's decision, that is the implementation of the decision of the ombudsperson, which focus on the freedom of religion and belief issues, is very important recommendation for our region. Unfortunately, the institutions, the only institutions that are local, that is national, apart from various international organizations that we have in Kosovo, that is specifically surveillancing over the human rights, is the Ombudsperson institution. And that institution is absolutely very important, but equally important is to implement and to follow up the decisions. And I think Mina has done very rightfully putting up this recommendation, because many of the decisions or the referrals including the Constitutional Court, that were actually running via the decisions, or were based on the recommendation from the Ombudsperson institutions, are not implemented, or at least partially implemented, unfortunately. And of course, the other would be, we need to utilize what we have. And I think that there is a wide spectrum of all kinds of mechanisms that really need to connect under some sort of umbrella. And speaking of this, I think the IPPFoRB could also serve as one of the platform. And speaking about the new mechanisms, the recommendation that emphasizes the importance of ensuring political, religious, and gender diversity to promote freedom of religion and belief is very, very important, because I believe we need to ensure appropriate balance of gender and youth as well in the whole debate and the whole discourse of the discussion. Unfortunately, in the Western Balkans, when it comes to religions, organized religions, institutions, all is well. But again, I think that the major part of the picture remains outside of this frame, and these are youth and these are women. And I think in any future mechanisms, which must be established very soon, that goes across national borders, should be welcoming, and that should be including youth groups, and their participation in our debate, I think, is of paramount importance.
Thank you very much. You raised implementing existing decisions, simply implementing them. You mentioned connecting mechanisms, again, that exist, and you discussed gender diversity and the importance of including a gender perspective and youth in these debates. Vladimir, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, just one footnote. I think what Besa has said is really helpful, especially in the part of the ombudsman. sometimes we are a little bit neglecting that position. And really, the ombudsman has the equipment and institutional capacity and knowledge and legal capacity as well to press with issues, to pinpoint, to contact internationals, because very often you have just these ordinary people that are not swimming well in this aquarium of local, domestic, and international organizations, bureaucracy, and documents. So that's a really, really good suggestion. And also I think it fits well, since we're here mostly with the Norwegian office of an international organization. I think it fits very well into the Scandinavian school of thought, you know, ombudsman, even the language is Swedish and all that. Cheers. Thank you.
Well, a number of questions have been coming in. So I'd like to start with the first one, which came in from Mashiha. And this question is addressed to Vladimir, but I think others might also want to comment on it. And it's as follows. Do parliamentarians have an obligation to pay attention to speech that would incite Islamophobia? Like talk about migrants and refugees. Often this topic has a multi-sectoral approach. Do parliamentarians now, in the past, are they careful not to hurt the feelings of believers?
Thank you for the question. Yes, absolutely. No, definitely. We need to take in consideration all the sides. We need to try to have every opinion on board. And we had many challenges, not just in Macedonia, but all over the Balkans with this issue. And if you see, for instance, in the last year or two, this is a really pressing issue in countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina, in country like Croatia, the Bosnian-Croatian border, in Greece as well. We're seeing right now that's a huge issue for Poland and the Baltic countries. We are seeing the scenes from the Belarusian-Polish border or Lithuanian Belarusian border. We were seeing that also on the Macedonian-Greek border in 2015, 2016. It was similar also back then in Serbia and so on and so forth. It's a huge issue. We need to try to address this issue not just on national level, but also on international level. And also this is a global phenomenon. If you see this issue in North America, South America, Australia, name it, it's really, we're talking here about millions and millions of people. So there needs to be an outreach. We need to help to the people as much as we can. Also, we need to take into account the needs and opinions of the local communities as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to comment on that, or should we move to the next question? If you'd like to comment, raise a hand, otherwise, okay. Then let's move to the next question. So I have a question actually from a colleague of mine at the mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And she writes, thank you very much for presenting the main findings of the report and to the panelists for sharing their relevant experience. I'm leading the portfolio on freedom of religion or belief at the OSCE mission to Bosnia and Herzegovina. And speaking from this perspective, I would like to ask Mr. Šepić if he's aware of any existing parliamentary mechanisms that have been in place for the promotion of freedom of religion or belief in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I will hand directly to you.
Yeah. Thanks to the question. As my colleague already know, we are now in a big crisis in Bosnia. We now have no, let's say, institution that can work. But when I was a member of parliament, I initiated to create this body as this informal parliamentary group, which will be, let's say, discussing about this topic. And that is since, let's say, till now, that is also in some parliamentary procedure. I can talk to my colleagues, as I'm not in parliament in the last 3 years. I was running for president 3 years ago. Unfortunately, I didn't succeed, and now I am without seat. But I can talk to my colleagues and ask them just to, let's say, continue with that initiative. And I think that initiative should be adopted in the parliament. but once when Parliament will start to work.
Wonderful. I know that the mission is very keen to also cooperate with a wide range of stakeholders, including parliamentarians. And there's a question I'd like to pose to everybody. It comes from Julia Dox at Besa. What connections with minority faith communities could be most helpful for parliamentarians at national or local levels? The kind of contact, the kind of discussion, or written resources, or something else? Maybe I could start with Besa.
Thank you for the question. I mean, all kinds of connections. Unfortunately, we have all our own concerns about the lack of written resources and the documentation with regard to freedom of religion or belief. And this is such a handicap, especially because when we talk about minorities, which are at the margins of our societies and who lack even the civic means to report or to raise their voices, it's quite a challenge. Every time that we speak of the situation of freedom of religion and belief. But there would be a suggestion from my side that apart from the, I believe that the narrative of speaking about FoRB, always with the connection to minority faith communities, is not fully, at least not fully, how to say, relevant for Western Balkans. And it is my opinion to say so, because when it comes to FoRB, neither majority nor the minorities are shining in this regard, and they all have big issues, especially when it comes to, I don't know, property rights, the right to association, to assembly, or because FoRB is such an umbrella which has lots of human rights, let's say, segments involved. But inclusivity is the answer, I believe, to talk and to speak to everyone, and especially to try to reach out to those who are voiceless in our societies. And these are, of course, the minority communities. Not always the faith community and ethnic community is one thing. And we need also to have this in mind, that apart from what we have in our legal documents about the ethnic groups and traditional religions, that there are always those who are both or neither, and we need to reach out to them. How can we do that? Well, I can tell you my own personal experience that I actually searched for them in person. I went to the streets and I went to the communities and I went to some centers who provide volunteering works and activities, and you will find them. And unless all don't do that, I believe that whatever we have on our, how to say, podium will not be inclusive and representative as such. So we need to take on board these kinds of activism, because as I tell you, civil society, unfortunately, is not as comprehensive as we would like them to see. And these groups are so invisible in our society that it really takes a dig up a lot into our communities to make them, to simply empower them and get them to surface. And talking about the lack of written resources, something which I regret, I haven't had the means to do that, is to document our own experiences while doing this, because, this is that issue with the FoRB. You cannot do all things at one, and this cannot be done by a person or a group of persons. It needs to be organized and institutionalized, and it needs to be backed by governments, by non-government sector, that people who do this work, they need also to document certain experiences, certain situations, because unfortunately, And I'm very much convinced that much of the stories are not there. We do not read them, we do not see them, and we are not aware of the impact that they have had in people's lives and eventually in the perceptions. So I don't know, my suggestion to these connections would be go direct, search in the society, raise groups of volunteers, raise the awareness about FoRB, go and ask people and talk to them. And then you will also see how that people who suffer from the lack of the implementation of their own rights are not even aware of this matter. And I think that having said this, there is much work to be done, absolutely so much work to be done. And it takes sincere activists to do so in order to lift this from the darkness to a surface so that the institutions and the civil society and the media actually get along or connect into this matter.
Thank you. You raised a number of important points, some even touching on actually what Vladimir was saying before, about not just looking at cities, but trying to go out and find out what's happening in different areas and meeting different people. I wonder, would anyone else like to comment on that question? If not, another question we have is, how can and should parliamentarians work with civil society on freedom of religion or belief? And I think that relates very closely to some of the comments that Besa was already bringing out, but maybe I will pose that to Senad first, and then if anyone else would like to comment, they can.
Yeah, I wanted to add something on the previous question, and I will also, let's say, respond on this one. There is no another, let's say, better way than to go direct, in direct discussion, in small groups, in, let's say, in your house, in your, let's say, in your street and something like that. But I think in this time where we live, the media is a let's say, have huge influence. I think that we have to, let's say, to train some people in media who will prepare and who will create, let's say, the best approach and the best information about this topic. I could see, for example, I could see that in many examples here in Bosnia, when somebody wants to, let's say, to see some progress in some idea, that starts with, let's say, with training media, and after that, media is spreading that information, and that can be, let's say, that can be in good progress. Collaboration, all, let's say, not only stakeholders in the, let's say, in the institutions, then media, NGO, business communities, and something like that. Third that I see is a very important are religion communities. They are very, very influential, let's say, in this area. And in the last, let's say, in the last point is political parties. As I already said, political parties, they have very, very big influence, let's say, for not only for their members, but they for let's say, for making some decisions. And that's why I think through political parties is very important to have very open and very, let's say, intensive discussion about this topic.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to add anything? If not, another question that we've been posed is whether you could offer practical examples of cooperation between different religious and belief communities within your country. And maybe there I'll start with Vladimir, and then if anyone else would like to add anything, they can.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan, for the question. I think the best place to see these cooperation between the different religious communities is when there is a time of need, when bad things happen, and then we see how similar we are. So the first thing that comes to my mind is, for instance, back in 2016, we had huge floods in the northern part of Skopje. There were casualties, a lot of homes were destroyed, and people were helping each other. And I think that helped to the local communities, that afterwards in that part of the city, some tensions that were happening in the past were a little bit diffused. I think that helped to the people a little bit to how to say, to know each other, to get together, and sometimes also to mourn together. They were also, there was a case 3 years ago, I think, with a bus accident in Macedonia, again, a bus accident, when on the Skopje-Tetovo highway, there were between, I don't know, 15, 16 casualties. I'm not sure about the numbers because it was 3 years ago. And they were people from both communities, both Macedonians and Albanians. I think also some ethnic Turks as well. So Christians, Muslims, atheists, how to say, we all mourn together, and the pain is the same everywhere. So there are times when people are getting together, and also I think we need to work together, because a lot of things should be done in my country. You know, I don't want to be sometimes, you know, too critical of current or any government, you know, when we're speaking to, you know, when we're speaking abroad, you know, I'm trying to be more on message, but generally, regardless which government it is, we need to do more about our country, more about economic development, more about trying to keep people here in the country. We have huge problem with the pollution, air quality, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the things that I would like to mention, and they are, how to say, and the good thing is that these things were really, how to say, visible in the media. So the media was on board with these issues in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you. Besa, I see your hand.
Yeah, because I really need to share some beautiful stories. We need to wrap up with something very positive. And this happened in Kosovo. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, I would like to see more these positive stories among politicians, but we do have them across religious communities. I'll have two examples for this. One is the Catholic Archbishop of Kosovo. There was a case of a teacher of maths. She was wearing headscarf, and actually she was forbidden to continue her work. But it was a Catholic priest who said, I am Fatmire Buyupi, and the times when somebody will tell us what to wear or what to believe or how to show up has ended. This really had an impact. The other was when the women of different religious communities in Kosovo, it was the time that we were having the largest number of, unfortunately, foreign fighters to Syria. And they said, actually, they came up with the initiative to support the refugees. So they were actually providing a counter narrative to those who were saying we go to help Syria, and these women of various religious communities were saying, if we want to help Syria, we have Syrians here, so help the refugees instead. This was also a very good example. And the third comes from the parliament. It was this legislator and the last legislator as well. Actually, we are having new legislators every year, so it's not a long time. Since 2019, we had actually two national elections. It's where the Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights, Gender Equality, is pretty a long name, but members of the parliaments of various religious affiliations, but representing various political parties and ethnic groups, were actually summoning the Minister of Education on the cases of religious discrimination in the school. And I think these joint actions, they have their echo to the respect of the human rights, and they are very important for us. Can I go back to the previous question? I think that was a question with do and should, but I think we should include the shouldn't or must not. And that is really related to the hate speech that can, or at least often happens, to be part of the public speeches of various MPs in the parliament, and they are hate speech. They are like derogating to certain groups or individuals, and this is something that must not in any way happen in any parliament in the region. And this is something that can be addressed, I believe, easily, or should have the mechanisms that people in the parliament are held also accountable when they have their speeches, and if their speeches affect in one way or another various religious groups.
Thank you. I see Liv has her hand raised. Oh, Liv, you're on mute.
It was more a practical issue about an upcoming question, but I'll let the others finish first, and then you can just return to me afterwards, Susan. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Would anyone else like to add anything? Senad, would you like to add anything to that point? Or if not, there was a question that came in Albanian, I believe, and it is
the question in Albanian.
And the comment is from somebody called HH, and they write, we consider you, I'm afraid this is a translation, but we consider you a very constructive person in the parliament who respects European standards of freedom of religion or belief. There was a need, something about a need for a synagogue in Pristina. And are you supportive of this initiative?
I have, thank you, Dr. Husseini, for making this question. I would like also to thank Mina once again for reflecting the situation about the Jewish community in Kosovo, historic religious community in Kosovo in her report. And unfortunately, yes, the lack of a synagogue. I have declared, made my statements public several times the last years that I am in full support of a new synagogue in Pristina or wherever the community deems it necessary. And this is because I believe there will be, it's my firm belief that FoRB will see no light in my society unless some corrective measures of our past are not taken. And that is, we need to restore the synagogue that was closed and destroyed. It's not new to Kosovo society or to our collective memories. We have the Jewish cemeteries. We have we have our oral history. We have our memories, and apart from that, we have a strong tradition and linkage with the Jewish community here in Kosovo. And those who have, unfortunately, no longer here. But yes, synagogue should be there. And I think that would be another sign, an exam for our government and other institutions vis-a-vis their, let's say, consistency in respecting human rights in Kosovo.
Thank you very much. I'm aware that time is almost up. And so I'd like to just offer the opportunity to each of you to offer one comment, something perhaps that you weren't asked, but that you would have liked to have had the opportunity to say. Now is your moment. Could I start with Vladimir and then go to Senad and then Besa? Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. You should give me more time and more notice so I can get myself ready for your flood of questions. No, just keep up the good work. I think it's a good initiative. I think Mina made, how to say, good food for thought. And also it's good to see a lot of people online. So yeah, let's try to see what we can do better. I hope that, you know, in these post-COVID circumstances, we're going to function better, and that after 2 years of everything online, everything silicon, everything on screen, we'll be able to say to each other hello in person, have a handshake and have a coffee. So good luck to everyone. Good to see you guys. Keep up the good work. Cheers. Thank you.
Was my pleasure being here. I think that you should organize more regional forums this was also good for me to see my colleagues from Kosovo and from North Macedonia. But with you all, I also would like to thank to Mina. Mina, you really did great job. And with your report, with your recommendations, with all your job, I really think that we will, let's say, we will all have good, useful from your work. And if you can organize maybe some next forum that will be in live, next forum should be somewhere here in Western Balkans countries. Thanks again.
Besa, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm really very grateful for this opportunity. And actually, I'm more than happy to see this thing going on at this level, at this depth of the discussion. And I only can wish for it to continue. And yes, of course, you are most welcome to come to Kosovo. We are like the let's say the nucleus here in the Balkans, and you can actually experience in person the diversity that we have, but also the challenges that we are all very eager and let's say confident that we can resolve.
Thank you. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank each of the panelists and hand back over now to Liv.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Mina, Susan, and our wonderful panelists, Besa, Senad, and Vladimir. And also to our interpreters who have been working quite hard behind the scenes as well. Also, would like to thank everyone who took the time to tune in today. And just, again, encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to read the report and get back to us using the comments function in the report website, or contact us for ideas, suggestions, and inputs that you might have that might come to you after having listened to this discussion. I should say that I very much agree with the comments about meeting in person. And, you know, this report has been completed a while back, and we were hoping for so long to be able to launch it in the region. That was our ambition and wish. But as the pandemic has lasted for so long, we thought we'd better launch it before it's sort of old news and before it gets forgotten. But I will say that we still have the ambition of reuniting in your region and to make use of the report in the time to come. So I'm really hoping that 2022 will bring the possibility of gathering us all together in a physical meeting where we can have more in-depth discussions and maybe also develop some concrete plans for future action and cooperation. I'm really thrilled and impressed by the level of reflection, the number of useful inputs, the amount of agreement between you. I think that this is a wonderful opportunity to be able to bring certain issues forward in a very sort of friendly and cooperative spirit. We hope that you will make use of the report, our dear panelists, together with your colleagues in your respective parliaments. But we also hope that the recommendations can be picked up by other stakeholders, civil society, religious and belief communities, relevant institutions, etc., etc. We will continue our cooperation with and support to parliamentarians in the region. And we also hope for constructive dialogue with other actors and stakeholders in the region as well. And like I said, we really hope to be able to return for more in-country and in-region follow-up in the not too distant future. So once again, a big warm thank you to everyone, and wishing you all a very nice rest of the day. And please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. Thank you very much.